Hello, everyone, and welcome along to Betting Weekly Game Bet Match, a tennis betting podcast brought to you in association with Bet Rivers, your hometown sportsbook. Then the waiting is finally over. We've had the dress rehearsal. We've had the tournaments for the last 2 weeks. I went solo on week one. Week two, Sean come back with a nice win to start off the tournament with on this year. And now the real business starts. It is the Australian Open. It's the first major of the year. It comes so quickly. And here is a preview of the outright winner. So this is the men's singles tournament winner. Sean, how are you, mate? You ready? You ready raring to go? I know you had your teeth done. Everything's fine. You were last time I spoke to you, you were full of the joys. You were happy. Tell me
that was the time before. I think that was the time before. I think you missed one.
Tell
Wednesday
me
was not quite.
We're going. Come on. What's happened?
Well, my tooth fell out again about 20 minutes ago. So after we've done these previews of the Australian Open, I've got to go back to the dentist and get it put back in again. It's on my desk over there, actually.
The actual tooth is on your desk?
It's a crown, so it's like the top of a tooth, isn't it? So, if you want to see it, I've got it right here.
Show it in your hand. Show it.
There it is.
Oh, no. Now, you might be able to put it on eBay.
I was only having a sandwich. It's not like I was sitting there having like a tough steak or something. I was just having a sandwich and now it popped. So yeah, it's
age, Sean. It's age, and the thing is, you might
that shouldn't have anything to do with teeth, surely.
You got a big following now. People enjoy your comments. We've got so many subscribers on the Betting Weekly Studios.
I'm not embellishing any of this. This is all. This is my life, for better or for worse.
Don't get rid of it. I would say, listen, put that on eBay. You might get, I don't know, all of about $15.
I think they're actually putting it back in. I think they want me to take it down with me, and they're just gonna.
Why you left it on the side?
What's that?
Why you've left it on the side? What?
Oh well, obviously going to clean it first, but it's they're molds, aren't they? They have to send off to get the molds made, and then when they come back, it's a whole performance.
It sounds a bit too much for me. Anyway, let's talk about the business in hand. The business in hand is finding the winner of the first major of 2024, the Australian Open. It's a tournament that's been dominated by Novak Djokovic over Liz. He's won it 9 times, been in for a perfect 10. And he started as an even money favourite to win the tournament. Before we go into the draw and look at the tournament, give us a little bit of an insight. I mean, this is Novak Djokovic's backyard, isn't it? He's won 4 of the last 5. The only time he didn't win it was the tournament he wasn't allowed to play in because of the COVID restrictions. He's won 8 of the last 13 in Melbourne. Before we go on to Novak Djokovic, let's give us the little bit of the court conditions and what you expect in Melbourne over the next fortnight.
Yeah, so the trends are, as you said, so no one other than Djokovic, Nadal, Federer has won this since 2014 when I had Stan Wawrinka at 60-1. I'm still dining out on that because it's one of the few occasions in my career really when I've talked about a slam and I've put someone up and they've won, and it hasn't been Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, Murray. So no one since
that's one of the reasons why you can go to the dentist 5 times for a crown, because of Stan Wawrinka.
Well, that's for one payment. I'm not paying every time.
Well, that's one of the reasons.
That was 10 years ago. That was 10 years ago. That money hasn't lasted since then.
Sure, I know you well. That money will stretch 10 years. Trust me.
My whole career has been basically trying to get Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, and occasionally Murray beat at Grand Slams, and it's more often than not, vast majority of the time, it's proved very, very difficult to do. The best I've been able to do is obviously this Wawrinka one, and then a few each ways, and I think I had Murray a couple of times at all right price. But yeah, trend-wise, very, very difficult. As far as the conditions are concerned, Leighton Hewitt said it's probably a bit quicker than Sydney, which was the United Cup. But the problem is these balls, these Dunlop AO balls, they're fluffing up badly after the first sort of 5-6 games. Some players saying it even quicker than that. I think Medvedev said they were like hitting apples, I think was his way of describing them. But he's not very complimentary about any tennis ball, I don't think, Medvedev. It averages 80% hold, 72% first serve, points won in the 4 editions that's been played on a green set court. So that puts it sort of slightly quicker than the US Open, but obviously slower than Wimbledon. So it's really a kind of medium-ish, sort of quicker side of medium potentially. Hard court, but obviously the weather has an impact. And, if you're trying to second guess the weather in Melbourne, you're onto a loser, really. Today it's 32 degrees in Melbourne. Tomorrow it's going to be 22 degrees. So there's a 10 degree drop off there. And the rest of the week could be anything, apparently, between 23 and 29, with some rain, some thunder. anyone that's not been to Melbourne or isn't familiar with it, it's very, very changeable. The weather can just change so quickly. So I think the bottom line is it doesn't look like it's going to be one of those insanely hot fortnights. Like when I was there, it was like 40 degrees. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be kind of warm, but not too warm by the looks of things. As far as underdog winners are concerned, I've mentioned before, Grand Slams, technically the worst, statistically the worst place to look for underdog winners. Only 23% of them win at the Australian Open.
You mentioned there about the balls. Now, this is a talking point across tennis and Twitter, and a lot of people talking about the balls, the Dunlop balls here. There'll be a lot of people who watch this show for the first time. Hopefully, there's a lot of new people, new subscribers coming along here and watching the show for the first time who might not be quite familiar about it. I mean, people who have followed us for over the last year or so will understand the different balls conditions and the obviously court conditions. Can you just explain a little bit about the ball so like the people who have just tuned into this for the first time, I understand what we're actually talking about here.
So these are extra duty balls, which means they're supposed to last longer, but the different manufacturers obviously do them in different ways, and some of them perform. In fact, they all perform very differently. It's what players are complaining about. There's no uniformity. You would have thought, coming in from a sort of layman's point of view, you would have thought a tennis ball should be the same one throughout the season, but it's not. The clay tournaments are generally different. They used to be the Babolat ball, and they changed it. It's commercial forces really that play a part in this. It's about money ultimately. Who pays the ATP Tour the most to use their ball? But every tournament can choose their own ball. Then it's not like football where the ball is the ball. Week in, week out, the same ball. They're all different balls, manufactured slightly differently, so they perform slightly differently. Some are lighter, like the Wilson US Open balls are smaller and lighter, and they fly through the air quicker. Some of them are slower and heavier. The head balls tend to be a bit heavier. The Technifiber balls are quite dead as well. These particular ones, the Dunlop AO ones, which came into force, I think it was last year for the Australian Open, they start out quick, but once they've hit the surface a certain amount of times, they fluff up, and when they fluff up, they get a lot slower, leading to a lot more sort of elongated rallies. But the bottom line is when they start, they're quick. After a certain period of time, they get a lot slower.
Is there any particular player that would be much more conditioned to the ball, or it would be suited to the ball, or is it just a bit of potluck really on the conditions you play in?
I think it's potluck. I think court surfaces will matter as well. The different courts will react differently with the balls. As I said, if the balls stayed as they are when they first come out of the can, it would favour the sort of bigger hitters, the bigger servers. But if you're playing a match, you would expect the first maybe 3-4 games, the conditions to be quick and then get slightly slower. So it doesn't really favour one player over the other, really.
So that's the balls. It's a very contentious point at the moment. A lot of it's a really big point. The players are complaining about a lot of injuries, a lot of wrist injuries, and a lot of people.
It should be the same ball, shouldn't it? I mean,
it should be.
But if I was to do a show on what should happen on the ATP Tour, I'd be here a very, very long time. It's commercial forces, isn't it? It's to do with money and sponsorships and branding and all the rest of it. And who pays the most gets the ball, I suppose. In this case, it's Dunlop, but the players don't like them.
A lot of old balls to me. But anyway, let's move on to the tournament. We're now look at the draw. I mean, the draw is usually in some of these shows we've spoken about this. This is the men's singles over here in Melbourne and the Australian Open, the first major of the year. Usually we look at draws and we say, well, there's a real advantage in the top half of the draw and there's a real weakness in the bottom half of the draw. That's like we like to see. On this draw here, I think obviously the top half, I think is a lot. I think it's tougher than the bottom half when you get to break it down to the last 16. There's a dangerous floaters around, but if it went to the seedings, the top half of the draw is a lot more difficult than a lot more difficult than the bottom half of the draw. The bottom half of the draw does seem the weakest part of it. If we look at the schedule now, obviously things don't go to schedule, but Novak Djokovic in the last 16 is due to play Ben Shelton, if that was going to go to the seedings. And that is a repeat of the semi-final of the US Open. Shelton plays a very difficult first round match against Botic van der Sandschulp. Sinner plays Botic van der Sandschulp. Djokovic
Bautista,
plays...
isn't it?
Yeah, Bautista or Gut. Sorry, I knew it was a double-barreled name and I just forgot the person it was. Fritz plays Tsitsipas as well in that first quarter. Then we have Sinner, who plays Botic van der Sandschulp, who plays Kachanov, but also he could quite easily play Tiafoe. Alex de Minaur up against Rublev. But in that section, you also have Korda and Jari. That's the top half of the draw. The bottom half of the draw, Holger Rune against Herbert Hurkacz, Dimitrov against Medvedev, Zverev against Rude. But obviously, Rude is probably, I don't think Rude's going to be suited really here this week.
He's playing well. He started the season really well, actually, Casper Ruud. I was quite surprised. We'll come on to him in a bit.
But I wouldn't, I think Lehecka will probably give him some problems there. Norrie as well is also in that section. And you've got Tommy Paul and Alcaraz. So if you look at the draw, you would say it's weaker in the bottom half of the draw. Remember, Bet Rivers offer a half the odds 1-2. So you can get half the odds of your player to win the tournament to make the final. And I think if you're looking for each way value, you have to concentrate on the bottom half of the draw. Would you agree on that, Sean?
Yeah, I think the top half is obviously, well, it's got Novak Djokovic in it for a start off, hasn't it? His record is phenomenal. But yeah, I think the bottom half is potentially the easier of the two, slightly. Yeah.
Now let's look at the outright prices. And Novak Djokovic is currently even money to win his 10th Australian Open title. Now, I've had a couple of DMs through to me today. Before we look at the other runners and riders, I had a couple of DMs over the last days just saying Novak Djokovic wins. Like Novak Djokovic wins. It's basically even money Novak Djokovic to win the tournament, or you can have 127 other players at even money. That's how the market is here. Now, when we see the dominance that Rafael Nadal has had on the French Open and Novak Djokovic had here, years gone by, you might probably go for that fact that Djokovic will win it, but I'm not quite sure. I'd like to know your thoughts on Djokovic before we go. Before we go, let's go to the outright markets. Carlos Alcaraz is plus 320. Yannick Sinner is $6. Medvedev is $9. Zverev is 22. Diminuar 30. I can't understand why he's sixth favourite to win the tournament. But anyway, Holger Rune is 30-1. Tsitsipas 35, the beaten finalist last year. Dimitrov, who just won the tournament for the first time, I think, since 2017, is 40-1. Yeah. Rublev at 60. Shelton 66. Casper Ruud at 66. And Herbert Hurkacz at 70. So before we go around the runners and riders, let's start with the main man, Novak Djokovic. Do you see, as a tennis expert, someone who watches tennis every single day of his life, do you see any chinks in his armory? Do you see anywhere that anybody who wants to oppose him can, even at his age now, is there any light for anybody who wants to oppose Novak Djokovic, or is it a question of that if he wants to win it, if he turn up and he plays his best, he wins the tournament?
I think it's just about physicality, really. If he plays his best tennis, he turns up fit and fire, and then, yeah, you would expect him to win. I mean, he's miles ahead on the stats. Service points, one return points, one total the last 12 months. 113.5 on outdoor hard, and a service hold and break total of 123. Now, that puts him clear of everybody else. Yes, his record here is exemplary, as you said. The concern is the injury. There's always something with Novak, isn't there? And it's kind of annoying because it leads you to believe that you can take him on, and then he turns up and he's absolutely fine, and he wins the tournament without dropping like 1 or 2 sets or something like that. This time it's the wrist injury. Played United Cup, didn't play at all well, but you wouldn't, by his standards, you would kind of forgive that. Really, a lot of these top players, we haven't really seen them, have we? Tennis is so strange that it has one of its 4 biggest tournaments played in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. It's madness, isn't it? It's like having the FA Cup in like October. It's not right. So you don't see the players really in competitive action since last November. But the concern is his wrist. He said he had a wrist problem in that United Cup that he played, which was a kind of a knockabout for him. He got beat by de Minaur, hence the de Minaur prize. Yep. So it's just about fitness, But he is, he's going to be 37 years old in May. Whatever he says, whatever he does, it's not normal for a 37-year-old guy to be playing the way he does on a tennis court. I'm not suggesting any impropriety, but he can't carry on, surely. He cannot carry on playing tennis like that.
We said it for years. We said it about Nadal, though, didn't we? We said it about Federer. They just know how to.
Well, Federer was a different style, wasn't he? He was a lot less wear and tear. But Djokovic,
mentally, just so good. He's the best sportsman in the world. I mean, just like,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I can't back him at even money. It just, if I said now back Djokovic at even money after 15 years of trying to take him on, it's obviously he would lose in the first round and
Yeah,
get defaulted or something like that.
that is a great point, but also I think the caliber of opponent isn't there anymore there was in the past. I mean, I know the strength in depth is quite good. The number 16 seed, better number seed, but there isn't a Murray, there isn't a Federer, and there isn't a Nadal around to push him. He's the only player in the draw who's won this tournament. You know, that's I can't remember a major for many a year where the only person in the draws won it. I mean, even when Rafa was winning the French Open, there was players in the draw who won it.
Not many, not many.
Well, there was Roger, there was Djokovic, wasn't there? Djokovic has always been in there in the French Open, hasn't he? He's won the French Open, and so there was
Yeah, a
always
couple of
Djokovic.
times.
There was always Djokovic in that draw with him. So that I can't remember anybody who's been the sole winner of a major going into a tournament for.
Oh, Wawrinka's won it. He's in it technically.
Is he in the draw?
Wawrinka, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I've got that wrong. So again,
He's at the minute. He was yesterday. I know he pulled out of his match at the Kuyong Classic, but he's supposed to be playing Manarino in the first round.
Yeah. So I mean, Wawrinka's one, but but I mean, if someone said to me now,
years ago, you know, 10 years ago, that
if someone said to me now, listen, like you're a sports book, I'm Bet Rivers, and someone rang me up and said, listen, I want to have $5,000 or $10,000 and Novak Djokovic to win this tournament at even money, I would not be, even though I don't think he'll win the tournament and I want to oppose him, I would not be comfortable taking that wager. And that's where we find ourselves in this position. You're looking for someone to oppose him, but realistically, deep down in your heart, he's the likely winner, and you wouldn't risk any money on it. And that's the difficult scenario for bettors on this tournament.
Yeah, you're just tossing up really whether Djokovic is fit or not, and that's an eternal problem because I think he takes a lot of pressure off himself by saying these things. You know, the wrist's not very good, or the calf, or the shoulder, or the back, or whatever it is. I think in some ways that's his way of taking pressure off himself with these things. But is he? I know he's almost 37. I mean, I wouldn't be comfortable with either way. I wouldn't be comfortable with someone coming in and putting 10 grand on evens. That would worry me.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Similarly, I wouldn't want to put a load of money on him at that price as well. So
yeah. Exactly. It's the conundrum you face every time at this top that with Novak Djokovic, and then ultimately he goes on to win it. Let's have a look at there is a sort of a fab four now pulling away at the top. You know, we've had the top four
statistically,
dominate. Yeah, you've got Alcaraz, Sinner, Medvedev, and obviously Djokovic pulling away. And similar in the women's game as well. We've got an outright show on that as well with Roy Girani. We look at the women's draw, and there's a top four in there. Alcaraz, he was plus 320. He didn't play in 2023. His best ever performance in the Australian Open is reaching the third round. Jannik Sinner has only ever got to the quarterfinal, got beat last year by Tsitsipas. Medvedev reached two finals in 2021 and 2022, lost last year to Korda. The fade for me here is Alcaraz. I think the Alcaraz at 320 looks just, he's the one I want to fade. I've bet Sinner at 16-1 myself personally at the end of last year before we won the Tour Championships in Turin.
Half the price now.
Yeah, I'm thinking of, I don't like to say it, but I'm thinking of hedging a little bit already before the tournament starts because I think, I'm not sure.
Fitness
physically,
with him, it's fitness.
Well, if Djokovic, you think, I'm not going to bet him, is the likely winner going to come from that top four? Do we have to go further deep in the outright market?
I think likely it'll come from that top four.
And who's that person going to be?
Statistically, I think the best value is Medvedev.
Right.
The stats that I mentioned earlier, where Djokovic was on 113 and 123, Medvedev is the second best on 109 and 119 in terms of service points, won, return points, won totals, and whole break totals. So better than Sinner, better than Alcaraz. This is on outdoor hard only over the last 12 months at main level. So at those prices, I've taken Medvedev. I think you have to take Medvedev as the value if there is any. If you're looking at Medvedev at 9-1 and Sinner's sort of 7-1, Alcaraz is what, 3-1, not even 3-1.
Yeah.
Statistically, I think you have to take Medvedev, and the fact he's a two-time finalist. He should have won it, of course, when he failed from a winning position against Nadal a couple of years ago, 2 sets and a breakup, I think he was, or 2 sets and almost a breakup. So yeah, for me, Medvedev is definitely the value of the top four.
Yeah, I think he's. I'm can't back Sinner at 6. Would you agree? Me, Alcaraz the fade. It wouldn't surprise me to have won it, but
yeah, it's a difficult. Again, it's difficult with him, isn't it? At his such young age, the stats aren't good enough really for him to be that price. He can certainly win it. for sure. But is he a good value bet? I would suggest probably not. His total is 108 and 113, which puts him worse off actually than Sinner, worse off than Medvedev, and some distance behind Djokovic. So I think in terms of pure betting value, I don't think Alcaraz has any value.
So our official pick here to win the Australian Open is Daniel Medvedev. Well, Daniel Medvedev at $9. Daniel Medvedev at $9 each way. The Russian guy, Daniel Medvedev, at $9. Is an each way pick, Sean? Or are we going to go to win? It's got to be an each way in that bottom half.
I think you have to go each way. Regular viewers will know that I like to go with the bigger prices, but in Grand Slams, it's hard. It really is difficult place to find value. But on the hard court stats, I think Medvedev is the value play.
Now, Bet Rivers have a lot of specials on the market to make the semi-finals, to make the quarterfinals on their website. Head across to the website. There's so many different tennis markets. There's no sports book in America, without question, who have more tennis betting markets than Bet Rivers. Hence the reason why we do this show. Hence we try to get you involved and try to educate you a little bit more and give you some winners along the way on the tennis scene. But if we take away the top four, which is like, the elite group, the Champions League position, so to speak, the top four there. If we go down further down the list, who do you think there could potentially go deep and you might want to look at in someone at a very, very big price who could potentially make the semi-finals, quarterfinals, produce some shocks along the way, or maybe even someone that you might want to take it as a really big price to shock everyone and maybe even make it the final? We have Zverev at 22, Diminor at 30. So I don't like Holger Rune's an interesting one. A lot of people have been tipping him up. A lot of people have been saying that. Shelton obviously got all the hype, big serve, 66. Rublev at 60. Herbert Hurkacz 70-1 in a, he's got Rune in his third quarter, and Medvedev as well. Anyone that just outside the top four, you think someone's having a couple of dollars each way, someone's a little bit of an interest for a tournament? Anyone like you like there?
I think you have to look at Ben Shelton. I really do. I had a little punt on him pre-draw actually, 80-1, but I mean I wasn't wild about the fact that he got in the same section as Novak Djokovic, but he's I know he's had a bad result overnight, lost to Taro Daniel in Auckland.
He jacked that in. He didn't want to.
But I'll come on to that in a second. His return game is getting a lot better. He's winning 35% of his return points. Sorry, he has won 35% of his return points between the start of the US Open and now on hard courts. It's not fabulous, but it's for a big server that's pretty good, and it's getting better. We know all about the serve. It's it's a brutal serve, but returning wins you majors. 35% makes him dangerous. And he's taking a lot of his breakpoint chances now at the minute as well. 41% of his breakpoint chances he's taken between the start of the US Open and now. And you've got to remember, he came into that US Open with 0 back-to-back wins in the previous 3 or 4 months, I think it was. He came into the US Open in no form at all. Ended up, playing semi-finals. And he's gone from strength to strength since then. So that as you said, I'm not worried about him potentially tanking a match a few days before the Australian Open. He's a big match player. We know that he loves the big stage. A lot of these guys at the top of the market, I'm thinking of the Zverevs and the Dimitrovs and these sort of guys. They don't like it. They're not for me got the mentality for the really big matches a lot of the time. But this guy, he's got nothing to fear, has he? He's a young guy. He's a confident guy. He's a brilliant kind of character. Quarterfinals here as well last year. Semi-finals, US Open. So great hard court form in the majors. I think you have to look at him. The draw isn't ideal, but someone's got to beat Novak Djokovic. So he's one. Jack Draper is obviously another. You got to worry about fitness for him, but given the fact that he's still got a final to play in Adelaide, where it was extremely hot and humid yesterday, that would perhaps put me off a little bit about Jack Draper in terms of going all the way in a Grand Slam. Similarly, Lehecka, he's suddenly caught fire again, hasn't he? Last year made the quarterfinals here at the Australian Open out of nowhere. Poor form end of last season, couldn't barely win a match. 300-1 now with Bet Rivers to win the Australian Open. Again, you might be a little bit concerned the fact that he's still got another match to play in Adelaide before going to Melbourne. Those are the guys that I'm looking at really in terms of the bigger prices.
What about, this is only my point of view, Rublev, 60-1. He's a number 5 in the world. He's won his only tournament this year, obviously in Hong Kong. He's unbeaten this year. Got to the quarterfinals of the US Open, got the quarterfinals of the Australian Open, got quarterfinals of Wimbledon. Got beat by Djokovic on twice. And he got beat by Medvedev. He's the sort of nearly man. He had two big wins in Monte Carlo for us. We bet
Yeah,
him at 33-1. Won in Dubai when I was out in Dubai. Won that tournament there as well. I mean, if you are looking at someone, Sinner at 6-1, Rublev at 60-1. I know he's got a tough section. He's got Dimouar, Korda, Jarry, but he beats all the people you expect him to beat. And then when he goes up against the better players, he gets beat himself. But if you think
that's the problem. Yeah,
Djokovic could get beat and Shelton comes through, then that will open up for Rublev as well. I just thought 60
that's
to 1 was a
possible.
big price. It was a big price.
Yeah, I mean, well, if Djokovic gets beat, then it's open season, isn't it? He's one of the Rublev is one of the guys that could take advantage. I still don't think he's got the mentality for it. He's so nervy and he's mentally so brittle. You know, the amount of times he gets down on himself and starts hitting himself with the racket, and he's lost matches out of nowhere that he's been in control of because he's suddenly just got aggravated with himself for missing an easy shot or not putting a volley away or something, and then he's completely melted down. I don't think he's actually got past the quarters, has he? Of a major. Did he get to the semis once?
I don't know. I haven't got information in front of me, but I know he's got to the quarterfinals of three of the majors last year in the third round at the French Open. So I just thought 60-1. He's the kind of guy that will win a major when everyone goes out. If they ever get,
I'm not so sure that he would. I could see he's had this position before at Indian Wells, I think, when everyone lost and he was left with, I think it was Fritz and somebody else, and he put in a bad one against Fritz. He just hasn't got the mental. He hasn't got the mental strength. I think he would just collapse in a pile of nerves. If you look at the mental strength of someone like Rublev and then Shelton, it's for me it's no contest. Shelton plays with no fear. Rublev for me plays with a lot of fear, and I don't think he sees himself as a Grand Slam winner deep down in his own psyche.
You mentioned Jack Draper there. I had another DM from one of our watchers and viewers and listeners and subscribers telling me he thought that Jack Draper was a big price for Wimbledon at 100-1. I thought it was good. I think he'd probably go out if he's fit. That's not a bad price.
It is all about fitness with him. Same with Sinner. Sinner, just very briefly going back to Sinner, does have the stats to be at the price that he is. But does he have the physicality? Still not sure. Draper, if he does, excuse me, if he does overcome that kind of physical weakness, if you want to call it that sort of lack of stamina, the constant injuries, he will get over that one day. If it's now, if it's soon, because this week he's shown some promising signs in Adelaide. Played a really, really tough match, didn't he? 3 hours, 37 minutes, whatever it was against Kekmanovic. Then came back the next day and beat Tommy Paul. Then came back the next day and beat Bublik in very, very hot conditions. So maybe this is the start of something big for Jack Draper. Maybe this is the start of him moving into being a physical contender. Andy Murray, when he started, was not nowhere physically, was he, when he first came onto the scene? Then he went through all the physical training and he became much, much more of a physical specimen. If Jack Draper's achieved that, and he looks like at the minute, fingers crossed, that he's on his way, then I wouldn't argue with that person that said that about Wimbledon.
Yeah, I thought it was a good bet. I think it was a good point. I think if he does sort of get some good form, he could start about 33-1. So that's pretty much it on the outright market for the men's singles at the Australian Open. Novak Djokovic is a worthy favourite. Wouldn't surprise us at all if he won it. We wouldn't bet him. We wouldn't take him on either. We just think the price is probably about right him. But always here, we're looking for value, looking for angles. We're looking for someone who can come through a section, the bottom half of the draw, and someone who can give him a game. And in the top half of the draw, we've gone for Ben Shelton here at 66-1. And in the bottom half of the draw, our main pick is Daniil Medvedev at $9. It's an easier bottom half of the section. You're going to get plus 450 if he makes the final. And at those prices, we'd rather take that, get someone to make the final at plus 450 than take the even money on Novak Djokovic. Staking wise, Sean, what is it? 1 unit and half a unit each way, or a quarter of a unit each way? Just was one an official pick, or
official pick, half a unit each way on Shelton, 1 unit each way, I would say, on Medvedev.
Yeah, so that's where we're going to go here. So it's Medvedev and Shelton. Medvedev is the man who's got to 2 Australian Open finals, never won it. But Novak Djokovic is clearly the man to beat. Alcaraz is a fade for me, plus 320. He's got the stats, but I think he's a fade. Sinner We both agree he's probably got to be a little bit too short. There's probably some huge liabilities as well after he is winning Turin as well. Lots of people getting on big prices, so the bookies are running scared. And that bottom group, all much of a much. Rublev may come through if the tournament opens up, but Shelton is our official pick at 66 to 1. Remember, you can subscribe to this channel, Betting Weekly Studios on YouTube. Please give us a subscribe. Give us a rate and a review. Give us a message as well. We want loads of messages from you. We want to know your pick. What's your best pick? Let us know. Any questions? We're going to be on throughout the Australian Open here. We're going to talk probably 2 or 3 times a week, going through the matches on each day, looking at the outright markets as well. Give us your pick. Let us know who you fancy to win the tournament. You can follow us as well on Instagram and Twitter, or X now as it's called, and our handle at Because We Win. And you can download this podcast on whether you get your podcast from Betting Weekly Game Bet Match. Also, Betting Weekly WTA with myself and Roy, and there's a video on the WTA outright market, who he thinks will win the tournament, and our picks on there, and have broken down the draw on there, which is also available on your preferred podcast provider. Sean, thank you very much for joining me as always.
Thank you.
We're going to do a video as well about your first round picks, which should also be live as well. Look forward to hearing from you on that. And it's going to be a busy couple of weeks, isn't it? So, go and get your tooth done. Make sure everything's all right, and be in top
Can't
form
wait
over the next couple of weeks here on Betting Weekly Studios, and Because We Win for the Australian Open. Take care.